not what you want to see in front of a building you live in. They're here all the time.
We already know these things, but it definitely bears repeating. Interest begins to accrue again in September. In October, payments will restart. Student loan repayments have been on pause during the pandemic. But at the same time this has been going on, inflation has been sky high. Here's some good news. Young people have apparently learned a thing or two in that time. Wallet Hub, which is a personal finance site, surveyed students, and inflation was apparently, as I said, a real teacher. Survey says that 79% said inflation improved their financial literacy, but that new knowledge meant that 9 out of 10 are now really worried about their financial future. Fair enough, but they still only give themselves a C grade because they think they should know more, and they are probably right. Here's the stumbling block, though. 25% of them said they would rather talk to their parents about sex than money. Okay. Well, since some of you don't want to talk to mom or dad, we have some ideas. Maybe you'll listen to us a little bit anyway. What you need to do is take advantage of the resources your college or university might offer. I simply typed in Georgia State University and financial literacy. A lot came up. Check out your school. There's either a class or a program. Budget. Yes, create a spending plan just like your parents do. Know how much you have coming in every month. Track your spending for a month. See what's going on. Keep searching for scholarships all year long. Make that something you check into every few weeks. And when you get a credit card, you do not get one with an annual fee. And do everybody a favor and get yourself a part-time job. It'll make your parents happy. You'll have money in your pocket, and all the studies show people with part-time jobs actually make better grades. Today, Alex?
Yeah, we've got some good stories today, but we do start with a scary situation in Brooklyn. There was a massive weekend fire, and 10 firefighters are hurt from it. It happened Sunday in the Williamsburg neighborhood. Would you just take a look at this smoke? It started out as a one-story fire, but it eventually spread to 9 neighboring businesses. More than 200 EMS and fire responders battled the flames. Thankfully, no one else was hurt, and the firefighters are expected to be okay, but those flames were violent. And there was a crazy scene caught on camera in Rhode Island when a car was lifted right up off the ground. This is thanks to a tornado which hit the New England area. Firefighters rushed to help the driver, who was fortunately not hurt. The storm went on to damage a number of homes and businesses and leave thousands of people without power. Well, hey, you remember Lunchables? It's like baby charcuterie. Well, it will step into school cafeterias. Parent company Kraft Heinz says it has adopted Lunchables to meet federal school lunch guidelines. The meals are being pitched as an easy way to serve students and save on labor. It's a little healthier, too. The company says it introduced whole grains, added more protein, and cut saturated fat.
That would make one of my kids. I know, I love them too. Yeah. But what'd you say, adult charcuterie?
It's baby charcuterie.
Oh, baby charcuterie.
A witness says the teen was eating his breakfast and talking to her when a man walked up and shot him. Crime scene tape surrounded a Waffle House on Flat Shoals Road in DeKalb County for hours Monday morning after bullets interrupted breakfast.
Everything happened literally like 2.3 seconds, like back to back.
Sanquisha Payton says she works at the restaurant and was out front with her friend just after 5 a.m. when a man appeared.
I just turned my head because I see like a side view of a person walking towards our way, and I look up, and then boom, everything just started happening. Boom, 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 boom.
Payton says she took off into the restaurant and called DeKalb County Police. Investigators say her 19-year-old friend was shot twice, but as medics rushed him to the hospital, he died. Police believe the shooting happened during a robbery gone wrong.
The whole situation is just crazy.
Investigators say after the shooting, the suspect took off and so far hasn't been caught. The shooting has people who live in the area concerned.
Being so close to home, I gotta tell my people, I gotta tell my family now that I heard this, I gotta tell them now. Just be more aware of our surroundings while we over here.
Payton says the victim used to work with her at Waffle House until he moved out of the area. She says he was visiting her at the time, and this loss hurts.
He's in school, he's about to graduate. You know, he's full of life, he's full of energy. I just pray for his family, like, that's all I can say.
Investigators say they have video of this shooting, but so far have not released any more information about what happened. If you know anything, you're asked to call the DeKalb County Police Department. We're live in DeKalb County tonight. Tyler Fingert, Fox 5 News.
Just so Cook. Police say that he shot a woman at the Baymont Hotel on Oakbrook Parkway. The shooting happened back on August the 15th. Officers said that the woman was shot several times. Medics rushed the woman to the hospital. No word on how she's doing right now. Investigators say the shooting happened during a robbery at the hotel. Police want Cook on assault, robbery, and gun charges.
Fox 5 Storm Team meteorologist Jonathan Stacey with you here. We're high.
Blew past them when he helped himself to a wooden porch left on the property when the home was taken away.
So it's a full-size 8x10 porch. It'd be what goes onto a house for entrance and exit of a house.
Pretty well constructed.
Very well constructed. Definitely used top-of-the-line lumber on building that porch. Very expensive porch.
Deputies say at some point during their investigation, the porch reappeared on the property, dumped upside down. Porch pirate is a term usually referring to a suspect accused of stealing packages from someone's doorstep. Investigators have dubbed Swanger a literal porch pirate for the theft, which has earned him a felony charge.
Yeah, some people may shrug their shoulders and say it's not a big deal, but when you take someone's property without their consent and the value of this porch was $3,000, you kind of just can't go take stuff off people's property.
Deputies say they had been on the lookout for Swanger for several days when they were called to his house for a domestic disturbance.
Suspect had gotten into an altercation with his wife, and at the time had thrown rocks at the house, doing damage, and also tried to leave the scene walking before deputies arrived.
Maneuver. Authorities have not released the driver's name, but say they took him into custody.
Later, it's not a hurricane anymore, but Hillary still causes widespread destruction as it slams into California. We'll take a closer look at the damage, but first.
An Atlanta taxicab driver survives a near-fatal shooting. I'm Fox 5's Angelique Proctor. Hear his emotional story straight ahead.
Get 2 sausage and egg biscuits.
Pay $3.61 a gallon on average right now. That's 2 cents less than a gallon last week, but 28 cents more per gallon than a month ago. AAA says the national average is $3.86 per gallon today. AAA says prices likely won't come down until mid-September.
Well, if you drive a Tesla, your data could be compromised. The company says a recent leak exposed about 70,000 people. The Maine Attorney General's office says this includes names, addresses, and social security numbers. Tesla says 2 former employees mishandled the data. They say they'll now file a lawsuit against them. Americans accepting new jobs ask for more money than ever before. According to new data from the New York Federal Reserve, the reservation wage, or the minimum acceptable salary to take a job, is now almost $80,000. The numbers from the Fed also show employers try to keep pace with the increase in wage demands. Economists say the data shows wages are increasing, driving force in inflation. Well, Atlanta will get a new professional sports team, High Tech Golf. Arthur Blank, who owns the Atlanta Falcons and Atlanta United, says he will own a team in the new TGL Golf League. Matches will be played at a special arena built in Palm Beach, Florida. Players will face off on virtual courses instead of regular greens. Blank says the team will help golf become more popular and attract younger audiences. There will also be teams in LA and Boston. Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, in partnership with the PGA Tour, own that league.
A $10,000 bond. Now, Chesboro's attorney Scott Grubman complained any bond was excessive.
At the end of the day, these are folks who are blasted all over the news, as I see here. So the purposes of bond, right, is to protect the community and to make sure that the person comes back to court. And the idea that one of these people would flee the country is probably pretty ludicrous.
Now, we mentioned the former president's bond is $200,000. That's more than anyone so far. The bond stipulations for Donald Trump are also different from the others. He cannot make any direct or indirect threats against victims, co-defendants, or witnesses, or the community. And listen to this quote. The above shall include, but are not limited to, posts on social media or reposts of posts made by another individual on social media.
All right, Randy, thanks for always giving us the latest. Now, this story will continue to develop and
systematic liberal bias. This is despite assurances by its creators that the chatbot is impartial. The researchers warn such political bias can have adverse political and electoral consequences. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he has new confidence that Ukraine can end Russia's invasion. It comes after the promised delivery of F-16 fighter jets. Denmark and the Netherlands yesterday announced they would supply the first US-made aircraft to Ukraine, with the initial 6 due to be delivered around New Year. Washington had approved the delivery of the jets ahead of Zelensky's trip to Copenhagen. Russia is warning that supplying the aircraft to Ukraine would only escalate the war. According to Denmark, Kiev may only use the donated F-16s within its own territory.
A $10,000 bond. Now, Chesboro's attorney Scott Grubman complained any bond was excessive.
At the end of the day, these are folks who are blasted all over the news, as I see here. So the purposes of bond, right, is to protect the community and to make sure that the person comes back to court. And the idea that one of these people would flee the country is probably pretty ludicrous.
Now, we mentioned the former president's bond is $200,000. That's more than anyone so far. The bond stipulations for Donald Trump are also different from the others. He cannot make any direct or indirect threats against victims, co-defendants, or witnesses, or the community. And listen to this quote. The above shall include, but are not limited to, posts on social media or reposts of posts made by another individual on social media.
All right, Randy, thanks for always giving us the latest. Now, this story will continue to develop and
Good evening. So the Fulton County Superior Court did file Trump's bail conditions, including specific conditions meant to prevent witness intimidation that includes through social media posts. We'll show you exactly what that court filing shows. So there's a total of $200,000 set for Trump's bail. That's for all 13 of his charges. Trump's lawyers were is published online. Other defendants in this case have also had their bail set. For example, John Eastman, his bail is at $100,000. Other defendants have a much less price to pay than Trump, considering they did face less charges than Trump. He has 13 counts, others have much less. Now, what we're seeing on the ground right now is media anticipating Trump and those other defendants to come here to the Fulton County jail to surrender here. They have until Friday to do so, but we do expect Secret Service to work with the District Attorney's Office and the Sheriff's Office here at the Fulton County Jail to make arrangements for how this arraignment and booking process will ultimately unfold later this week.
And even as former President Trump is dealing with this fourth indictment now, this isn't sinking his popularity. That's according to a recent poll. Voters in Iowa appear to grow more fond of Trump. Melina, tell us about this poll.
Yeah, so that Iowa poll is very important because Iowa is the first state where GOP voters will head to make their pick for the GOP nominee. That poll shows that Trump's lead actually grew by 5 percentage points since this Georgia indictment took place. So right now it shows Trump at 43%, DeSantis at 19%. Other candidates didn't even make it in the double digits. We'll read you Trump's quote that he wrote on Truth Social responding to that Iowa poll. So he said that I got the farmers $28 billion from China, the USMCA trade deal, and many others. Now, as far as how those other presidential candidates are responding to this indictment, DeSantis and Tim Scott, they've responded along the lines of, as they've always responded for the first 3 indictments, saying that this is an example of the weaponization of government, it's the criminalization of politics. Meanwhile, former Vice President Mike Pence has a different reaction, just saying that the Georgia election was not stolen, claiming that he had no right to overturn the January 6th the election on January 6th when he was in Congress. Now, as for Vivek Ramaswamy, he has a very solid take on this, similar to his previous responses. I asked him how he feels about this Georgia indictment. He told me that he isn't, this isn't how he wants to win. He even accused other Republican candidates of trying to use this to their advantage to get rid of Trump. Let's take a look at what Vivek told me.
I'm polling second in many of these national polls. It would be easier for me if Trump were eliminated from competition. I think that's what many Republicans, many in the Republican donor establishment are quietly rooting for as they prop up the other super PAC puppets. That is not how I want to win.
I also asked Vivek about his thoughts on Trump not attending that first GOP debate this week. He said he has no problem with that. So we could expect to see Trump post an interview with Tucker Carlson on X, where Carlson has published much of his other content. However, neither Trump nor Tucker Carlson have publicly confirmed that this is what they're planning to do. Back to you.
Thanks for that update, Melina. And in Trump's 2020 vocal about recent government failures in Hawaii when it comes to disaster preparedness. Could you elaborate on your concerns about the state government's response to the wildfires and what you believe needs to change?
Well, thanks for having me, Stefania. The number one job of government, the reason we pay all the taxes we do, is for public safety. We expect government to keep us safe. And that was not the case in Maui last week with the wildfires. The government was well aware of the possibility of wildfires. It knew strong winds were coming. It knew that power lines could come down and start wildfires in grass that was especially prone to wildfires. And despite knowing that, it offered no warning to the residents of Maui. It provided no guidance to them, even in their emergency procedures guides. The sirens never went off to warn people. When the firefighters got there to put fires out, there was no water in the hydrants because the government, they have some special reverence for water there. They didn't want to use the water. It took 5 hours to get the water released to the fire department in one case. And so the whole catastrophe just seems to me to be on the shoulders of government. And instead, what we're seeing is, government blaming climate change, which is clearly not at fault here. We have government that is going to investigate itself, which is never a good idea. And we can expect them to blame climate change again. This whole thing has been a disaster. And it's really government's fault.
And so how do you suggest navigating these discussions about climate change while acknowledging the critical aspects of disaster mitigation?
Well, I would first investigate to see what happened. We know climatically what was going on, weather-wise, what was going on. There was a hurricane that was causing strong winds. The grasses were dry, as they are at this time, but temperatures were not particularly warm. The ground was not particularly dry, and so there's no real climate angle here. But putting that aside, let's just look at what the government did. Then you can look at climate if you want, and then you can go back. If we had an independent investigator who we could trust, we could let the decision lie with them. But instead, we're going to have a government that is anxious to exculpate itself and anxious to blame something that it's very much invested in to start with, climate alarmism. So I don't think that we can expect a fair shake from the government investigating itself.
Well, that is a concerning proposition, but we do know that policymakers will be trying to learn from this. What suggestions do you have to ensure a comprehensive approach?
Well, it seems to me that government has forgotten, not just in the case of Maui, but in many places, that their first duty is public safety. It's not doing that right now. It's more concerned with long-term political agendas. In the case of Maui, it's interesting to read, like the utility, for example, more concerned about wildfires starting in the year 2100 from global warming than wildfires started this year. Now, I can't entirely blame the utility because the utility proposed to the Hawaiian government a $190 million plan to mitigate wildfire risk. It did that more than a year ago, but the government hasn't done anything with it. So this is just a colossal failure of people who should know what their responsibilities are, but don't, and certainly don't act on them.
Steve Malloy, thank you so much. Great to hear your insights.
Talk us through what happened.
Now, in Bournemouth and actually across 5 councils in the UK, local measures have been introduced which ban what they call any form of expression of approval or disapproval of abortion. And in Bournemouth, it specifically lists examples including prayer, crossing oneself, as some people do, reading scripture, and a whole other manner of Christian-friendly activities. What was not clear was that this would also apply if you're not expressing anything verbally, but merely standing silently with the thought of prayer inside your head.
So the police come and ask you what you're thinking.
Correct. So in multiple circumstances, it's been the police come and ask the individual what they're thinking. In Adam's case, it was local council officers. And when he admitted to them, I suppose, that he was praying inside his head, they issued him with a fine. Adam didn't pay that fine because he felt it went against his conscience to say that in the UK that it's ever illegal to be praying inside one's head. It just sounded too ridiculous, too Orwellian, it couldn't possibly be true. So he didn't pay the fine, and now he actually faced his criminal trial because of these facts, because he prayed near an abortion facility in a so-called buffer zone, and obviously not being able to pay the fine, he now faces criminal charges. So he's pled not guilty, and we'll be seeing his case play out in November in the Pole Magistrates Court.
So when those officers came over, if he said he was thinking about something else, that would have been completely fine.
Right. If Adam had been even speaking loudly, protesting about, say, climate change or another social issue or another topic, that would have been perfectly illegal. But because of the content of the thoughts in his head, because they were specifically about abortion, about it being pro-life, that was why he allegedly broke the so-called buffer zone, or censorship zone, I like to say.
So this is not the first case of this type you've been working on either?
It's not. It's actually the 3rd case, if you can believe it, of thought crime in the UK. I know.
Taking a step back from all of this, it feels like the kind of traditional values and beliefs are in direct opposition to a lot of more progressive values that we're seeing become more prevalent these days. There's even legal and societal frameworks being put in place so you can't criticize
Resting you for your thoughts.
values. And what does this mean for people with more traditional beliefs in society today?
Yeah, I think, firstly, I challenge the framing of progressivism, because I think we've kind of been put into this box where what we're told is that we're against progress. And I am saying I'm very much for progress. I'm for progressing women's support for women to thrive as mothers. I think it's actually quite regressive to be taking that away from women. I'm supportive of progressing the rights of the unborn, which is an equality issue, because whether black or white, male or female, disabled or not disabled, born or unborn, we should all have rights, equal rights, irrespective of our characteristics. So I think actually the pro-life message is not an aggressive one, but a progressive one. But I understand what you were saying. It is definitely there is certainly a cultural drive to make it very difficult for people to express beliefs that are more traditional, that are more conservative, maybe have a Christian ethos in them. We can see this with abortion, with belief in male and female and the differences between them, and supporting each to thrive in their own sex. It's
would face any repercussions, and moreover are supported by the state. During his more than 2 decades in power, Putin has massively boosted the Russian Orthodox Church's standing, increasing its prestige, wealth, and power in society. In turn, the Church has thrown its weight behind the fighting in Ukraine. It has been commonplace to see its clergymen blessing troops and equipment, heading into battle, and invoking God's blessings.
Thousands in Turkey took part in an annual swim yesterday that involves crossing between 2 continents. The popular event is now in its 35th year. They swam the 4 miles crossing the Bosphorus Strait from Istanbul's Asian side to the Europe side. Some 2,600 athletes from over 70 countries took part. The winner in the men's general division completed the crossing in 42 minutes and 54 seconds, and the women's winner in 41 minutes and 22 seconds.
Jason Blair brings us more from a hearing today in San Francisco.
We know that RFK Jr. is challenging President Biden in the 2024 election, but he's also suing Google and YouTube during his campaign. I'm outside a U.S. courthouse in San Francisco where prosecutors want a restraining order on the tech giant. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did not attend Monday's hearing, which was set before Judge Trina Thompson. Kennedy initially filed for a temporary restraining order on August 2nd against Google and YouTube. On Monday, the judge held the beginning of the case and will continue with a slew of hearings. Kennedy, a Democratic candidate running for the 2024 election, accuses that Google worked with the federal government on disinformation policies, censoring political opponents and their videos. Kennedy's lawyer told the Epoch Times,
"These kind of motions are very hard to win, but we think, given the importance of the political issues, that it's that she should think seriously about granting it. I hope she does grant it."
According to the complaint, YouTube removed a video of Kennedy's March 2023 speech at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, posted by Manchester Public Television.
In a true free market, we would be forced to properly value our natural resources.
The lawsuit claims that only a portion of that speech dealt with vaccines and much of it was on politics and Kennedy's career instead. A Google spokesperson has told NTD YouTube applies its community guidelines independently, transparently, and consistently, regardless of political viewpoint. These claims are meritless, and we look forward to refuting them. According to YouTube's policy, it doesn't allow content that spreads medical misinformation that contradicts guidance from local health authorities or the World Health Organization. RFK Jr. is known to speak about COVID origins and health concerns regarding COVID-19 shots. In San Francisco, California, Jason Blair, NTD News.
YouTube, meanwhile, is stepping up its content moderation. The platform is introducing a new policy aimed at content it considers to be medical